And we've taken $4 billion worth of oil in one day, and that'll increase. We're going to have it rebuilt. All the big oil companies are coming in. They're going to make a lot of money, and Venezuela's going to get some of that money, and we're going to get some of that money, and we brought stability to the region.
Well, Venezuela matters not that much in the short term. It could matter a lot in the longer term. In the short term, it would make a difference because of the rerouting of the oil exported from Venezuela. So that will shift where that oil goes from the black market in China predominantly to largely the United States. The US has a very significant refining capacity that in the Gulf Coast is optimized for processing heavy oil, and that's the type of oil that Venezuela produces. Venezuela was exporting 500,000 barrels of oil to the US per day before US sanctions started in 2019. Right now it's just exporting about 140,000 because of a Chevron license. So one can expect that at least 500,000 and probably close to all Venezuela's exports could go to the US. Venezuela has tons of oil. It's in a category of itself. Perhaps the only other country similar is Canada. These are huge reserves. They are as big or similar in size to the ones in the Middle East, in the Persian Gulf. The difference is the Persian Gulf has light oil, has higher productivity per well, and much lower cost than Venezuela. But Venezuela has competitive cost, lower cost compared to, say, the United States or Canada. So as a result, if Venezuela can reduce their above ground risk, their political risks of investing, the investment is no doubt profitable, and these reserves could be potentially developed.
We have to rebuild the country. They couldn't have an election. They wouldn't even know how to have an election right now. The country's become third world, and they wouldn't know how to have an election right now. We're going to rebuild the oil and the oil infrastructure. We'll be in charge of it. It's going to do great and make a lot of money, and we're going to take it from there.
Venezuela would require, in order to go back to peak production from the past, about $100 billion of investment, and probably between 8 and 10 years. And that would require a lot of conditions to align in terms of political instability, a credible institutional framework, good relationships and stable relationship between Venezuela and the United States. So all those things are big ifs at this point. In the short term, it's going to be relatively easy to get two types of investment. One is Chevron's investment, because Chevron is already on the ground, has already fields that they operate and have long-term contracts for them. And they are basically reinvesting part of the cash flow that they get from those fields. So it's very low risk for them to invest compared to a new entrant in the oil sector. There are other two European companies that are in similar position, and if the US allows them to proceed like Chevron, because of course they are not American companies, but if they are allowed, and I expect that they will, which are Repsol and Morel and Prom, which is a small French Indonesian company, those will also be able to increase production relatively fast. And then finally, there are these contracts that I mentioned that are for existing fields that are in decline, that this will bring like small American companies and perhaps, Canadian and some European, that basically these are fields that are currently operated by the national oil company, and they have been run to the ground in terms of production. They have declined very significantly. And so all the infrastructure is there in those fields. You just need to drill and be effective at extracting oil from a very declining, from a field that is in sharp decline.
¿Ha elegido usted gasolina?
Venezuela, different from other countries, had a massive infrastructure for the oil sector. This country was producing 10 years ago more than 2 million barrels of oil, so twice what is producing today. So there is a lot of spare infrastructure in the system. At the same time, the infrastructure has deteriorated a lot. And so sometimes people tell you that there are tons of oil wells that are closed that could be easily recoverable. Is not clear, because many of them have been abandoned, have not been properly maintained. Sadly, because of the collapse of the Venezuelan economy, there was a massive theft of infrastructure. So, oil employees were not being paid anything. And so a lot of equipment was stolen, etc. And sometimes when you steal, a piece of equipment, the value of equipment is relatively small, but the cost of repairing the infrastructure later could be really an order of magnitude higher, because you destroy a certain facility, and that has impact even in the potential future oil production.